My daughter had been using my credit card for months without ever asking me. I heard her tell her husband, "Your father-in-law is nothing but a walking ATM. Just mention the grandkids and he'll give us money." I stood behind the door, heard everything. But I didn't get angry. I quietly made a plan. One decision I made would change everything and make my daughter and son-in-law pay the price forever. Thank you for being here truly. Before this story begins, leave a comment below. Where in the world are you watching from, your city, your country? Let's connect. This is Dad Family Revenge, and you belong here. Please note this story includes fictional elements for educational and entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or places is purely coincidental, but the message it carries is one I hope stays with you. The morning I handed over the keys to the house on Redondo Avenue, I sat on the front steps for a long time before anyone showed up. It was just past 6. The sky over Long Beach was doing that thing it does in late October, pale gold, bleeding into gray at the edges, like someone had smudged the horizon with their thumb. The marine layer was still hanging low over the water 2 blocks east. I could smell it. Salt and morning and something I couldn't name, something that had lived in that neighborhood for 30 years and had no intention of leaving just because I was. I had a cup of coffee in my hand. It had gone cold 20 minutes ago. I didn't care. Patricia would have cared. She would have taken one sip, made a face, walked back inside, and poured herself a fresh one. Then she would have come back and sat beside me on these same steps, without saying a word, not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood that some mornings don't need words. They need company. She had been gone for 16 months by then. 16 months, and I still reached for her side of the bed every morning before I was fully awake. 16 months, and the coffee maker still brewed 2 cups on the setting I'd never bothered to change. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from the first scan to the last morning. People called it merciful, the speed of it. I stopped correcting them after a while. There's no point arguing with people about grief. Everyone thinks they understand it until it's theirs. I built my company Carter Construction Long Beach over 38 years. Started with 2 crews and a beat-up Ford pickup that leaked oil on every job site from Torrance to San Pedro. Retired 3 years ago with 41 employees, a solid reputation in commercial mid-size builds, and a pension that would carry me comfortably to the end. I was proud of what I'd built. Patricia was proud of it too, though she never made a fuss about money. She made a fuss about the garden. The rose bushes along the south fence were her project. 12 years of pruning and feeding and arguing with the soil until they finally gave up resisting and started blooming the way she'd always imagined. Dark red, almost burgundy. She called them her stubborn girls. I looked at those roses that morning and felt something move through my chest that I didn't have a name for. Not quite grief. Not quite love. Something in between that has no word in English that I've found. The house sold for $890,000. After the mortgage payoff, the realtor's commission, and a handful of things I needed to settle, I walked away with $612,000. I put $200,000 into a certificate of deposit at Wells Fargo, locked in safe untouchable for 18 months. $180,000 went into a savings account I could access if I needed to. The remaining $232,000 I kept liquid in a separate account, a cushion, the kind of number that lets a 68-year-old man sleep at night. I'm not a man who talks about money easily, but I'm also not naive about it. 38 years of payroll and contracts and vendors who would smile at your face and double bill you if you blinked. That kind of work teaches you to keep your eyes open. Always. The buyers arrived at 9:15. A young couple, mid-30s, a baby on the woman's hip, and a look on both their faces that I recognized, that particular mix of terrified and thrilled that comes with signing the biggest check of your life. I shook the husband's hand. I told them the roses needed bone meal in February. The woman touched the door frame when she walked in just briefly with her fingertips, the way people do when they're trying to feel whether a place is real. I understood that. I had done the same thing the day Patricia and I moved in 31 years ago, with a U-Haul in the driveway, and Emily asleep in her car seat, and a whole life still ahead of us that we were too young and too hopeful to be afraid of. I picked up my empty coffee cup and walked to my truck. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat before I'd cleared the end of the block. I glanced at the screen. Emily calling. I picked up on the second ring. Dad. Her voice came through the speaker before I'd even merged onto the 405. How are you doing? How did it go? Emily has had the same voice since she was 17, warm at the edges, quick in the middle, the kind of voice that makes you feel like whatever you're about to say matters to her. For a long time, it did matter. I still believe it does. In whatever complicated way, love survives in grown children who have their own lives and their own pressures and their own reasons for calling. It went fine, I said. House is theirs now. Dad. She said my name again, softer this time, and I heard something in it that made my chest tighten. Are you okay? Really? I watched the freeway open up ahead of me, 6 lanes of late-morning traffic moving north, the San Gabriel Mountains, faint and gray in the distance. I thought about lying. I thought about saying, yes, I'm fine, everything's fine, don't worry about me. I've said that sentence more times in the last 16 months than I've said almost anything else. I'm getting there, I told her. That was as honest as I could manage. She was quiet for exactly 2 seconds, I know, because I counted the way you do when you're waiting to find out which direction a conversation is about to go. And then she said, Dad, I want you to come stay with us. We have the room. Michael already said it's fine. The kids have been asking about you every single week. Emily. I kept my eyes on the road. I appreciate that, I do, but I need my own space right now. I know. She didn't argue, which surprised me. Emily has always known when to push and when to wait. But at least come closer. There's a building in Pasadena over on Cordova, 2-bedroom units, month-to-month leases. I looked it up last night. It would put you 12 minutes from us. 12 minutes. Close enough to see the grandkids on a Tuesday. Far enough to drink my coffee in peace. Send me the address, I said. I signed the lease 4 days later. 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a small balcony that faced west toward the San Gabriel Mountains. The rent was $1,800 a month, which was reasonable for Pasadena and more than manageable on my pension and the interest from the CD. I stood in the empty living room after the property manager left and listened to the particular silence of an unfurnished space, that hollow, expectant quiet that means nothing has happened here yet, but something is about to. I placed Patricia's photograph on the kitchen windowsill before I placed anything else. It was the one from our 25th anniversary trip to Carmel, her laughing at something I'd said, head tilted back the Pacific, behind her going silver in the afternoon light. She always hated that photo. Said her laugh looked ridiculous. I told her it was the best photograph I'd ever taken of anything, and I meant it. 3 evenings later, Emily's car pulled into the parking lot below. I watched from the balcony as the back door opened, and Noah climbed out first, the way 10-year-olds do, all elbows and motion, backpack half hanging off one shoulder. Then Lily, 7 years old, and carrying a paper bag almost as big as she was stepping down from the curb with exaggerated care. Her tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration. My heart did something it hadn't done in 16 months. It lifted. They came through the door, and Lily thrust the paper bag at me with both hands, beaming. "We made banana bread, Grandpa. I put in the chocolate chips. Mom said I could." She absolutely insisted on the chocolate chips. Emily confirmed from behind her, smiling in the doorway. There was no negotiation. "The best decisions never have negotiation," I said, and Lily laughed, this bright, unstoppable sound that bounced off the bare walls and filled every empty corner of that apartment in a way that no piece of furniture ever could. We sat on the floor because I hadn't bought a couch yet. Noah spread out cross-legged and told me about a model train set he was building in his room, a Pacific Coast route, he said very seriously, with a working signal light he'd wired himself. Lily drew a picture of the apartment on a paper napkin and presented it to me as a housewarming gift. In her drawing, the balcony was enormous, and there was a dog on it. "We don't have a dog," I pointed out. "Not yet," she said with the absolute confidence of someone who has not yet learned that some things don't work out the way you plan them. Michael arrived 40 minutes later, still in his work clothes, the kind of suit that costs more than it should, and knows it. He shook my hand with both of his firm and practiced the handshake of a man who had learned early that first impressions are a form of currency. "Al." He grinned. "Good to see you settled in. Seriously, this is a great spot." He glanced around the empty room with the quick, assessing eye of someone who spent his days calculating square footage and resale value. "Good bones. Quiet street. You did well." "Emily found it," I said. "She's good at that." He clapped me once on the shoulder, then, almost as an afterthought, casual enough that I almost missed it. "Hey, whenever you're ready to think about what to do with the house proceeds, I know some people. No rush. Just something to keep in mind." I looked at him. He was already turning toward the kitchen, already reaching for a slice of banana bread, already moving on to the next thing. The way people do when they've said something they want to seem like it doesn't matter. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. And I did. Just not in the way he intended. The Sunday dinners started the week after I moved in. Emily called on a Thursday morning. "Come over Sunday. I'm making pot roast." And the way she said it, not asking, just stating the way Patricia used to announce dinner like it was already decided, and the universe had simply not been informed, yet made something in my throat tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. I said yes before she finished the sentence. The drive from Pasadena to Silver Lake took about 25 minutes on a Sunday, less if I took the 210 to the 5. I started leaving at 4:30 so I'd arrive before the kids' bath time, when the house was still loud and alive and nobody had run out of things to say yet. Silver Lake was one of those Los Angeles neighborhoods that couldn't decide what it wanted to be: old craftsman bungalows squeezed between modern glass boxes, vintage record shops next to cold brew cafes, dog walkers and strollers, and someone always playing guitar on a porch somewhere. Emily and Michael's house was a 4-bedroom Spanish revival on a corner lot, freshly painted, with a lemon tree in the backyard that produced more lemons than any family could ever use. That first Sunday, Emily made pot roast, the way Patricia used to, low and slow, with pearl onions and carrots, and a gravy that took 2 hours to reduce properly. I sat at the kitchen counter and watched her move around the kitchen, and felt the particular pain of things that are almost the same, but not quite. Patricia used to hum while she cooked. Emily doesn't hum. Emily talks, constantly, cheerfully, about everything and nothing, filling every silence before it has a chance to settle. I was grateful for that. I didn't tell her so. I should have. Noah dragged me to his room after dinner to show me the train set 3 feet of track so far, a small locomotive with working headlights, the beginnings of a station platform built from balsa wood and tremendous ambition. He explained the wiring for the signal light with the focused intensity of someone who has recently discovered that electricity follows rules, and that rules, once understood, can be made to do exactly what you want. "Grandpa, did you do stuff like this when you were a kid?" he asked, not looking up from the track. "I built things," I said. "Different things. But yeah." "Like what?" "Furniture, mostly. Your great-grandmother had a workshop in the garage. She taught me." Noah looked up at that. "Your mom taught you." "She was better at it than I ever got," I said. And that was true. Lily fell asleep on the couch before 8 o'clock, with her shoes still on one arm thrown over her face, in the exact way Emily used to sleep at that age. I sat in the armchair across from her and just looked at her for a while, this small, fierce person who wanted to be a veterinarian and put chocolate chips in everything and drew apartments with dogs on the balcony. These were the moments I had said yes for. Not the convenience. Not the company, though I needed that too. These exact moments, a child asleep on a couch, shoes still on the sounds of a family moving through a house. The second Sunday, Emily mentioned Noah's math tutoring. "There's a Kumon Center on Colorado," she said, clearing the plates. "His teacher says he's behind on fractions. It's $800 a month, which is a lot, but—" "I'll cover it," I said. She looked at me over her shoulder. "Dad, you don't have to—" "Emily." I said her name the way she said mine, not a reprimand, just a period at the end of a sentence. "Let me do something useful." She nodded, turned back to the sink. "Thank you, Dad." The third Sunday, it was an air purifier for Lily's room. She'd been sneezing possible allergies. The pediatrician had recommended better air filtration. $1,500 for a unit worth having, Emily said. I transferred the money Monday morning. The fourth Sunday, the roof. "We've got a section over the back bedroom that's been leaking since last winter," Michael said, leaning back in his chair, casual like he was talking about the weather. "Contractor quoted us $4,200. We can cover most of it, but we're a little short this month." "How much short?" I asked. $2,000 would do it. I wrote the check before I left that night. In the car on the way back to Pasadena, I noticed something I filed away without examining too closely. Emily had thanked me for the Kumon. She hadn't said anything about the air purifier. And tonight, after I wrote the check, Michael had said thanks. Emily had already gone upstairs. I turned onto the 210 and drove home in the dark. The city spread out below the freeway like a second sky, and told myself that families go through rough patches, that this was what fathers did, that Patricia would have done the same thing. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A text from Emily. "Dad, hate to ask, but could I borrow your Visa for one online payment? We'll pay you back this week." I texted back, "Sure. Call me tomorrow and I'll give you the number." I should have asked what it was for. I didn't. 3 weeks passed before I looked at my statement. I'm not a man who checks his accounts daily. I never was. Patricia used to joke that I could run a 40-person company down to the penny and not notice the electric bill was overdue until the third notice. She wasn't wrong. I trusted systems. I trusted people I had reason to trust. For 38 years, that combination had served me well enough. I opened the Wells Fargo app on a Tuesday morning, sitting at my kitchen table in Pasadena with a second cup of coffee, and no particular reason for doing it, except that the rain was coming down hard against the balcony glass, and I had nowhere to be. I scrolled through the checking account, first pension deposit, utilities, the lease payment, all expected, all familiar. Then I switched to the credit card. I set the coffee cup down. $634 at Nordstrom on a Thursday afternoon. I hadn't been to Nordstrom. $289 at a restaurant in West Hollywood called Alma, a place I'd never heard of and certainly never visited. $1,100 at a home furnishing store in Beverly Hills. I sat with that last one for a long moment, reading the merchant name 3 times, as if repetition might change what it said. 3 charges, $2,023. None of them mine. My first instinct, and I'm not proud of this, was to assume there had been some kind of error, a processing mistake, a duplicate charge from somewhere else. I have lived 68 years as a person who assumes the innocent explanation first, and for most of those years, that assumption has been correct. It's a reasonable way to move through the world. It also, I have learned, has a cost. I brought it up that Sunday at dinner. Casually, the way you mention something you expect to be easily explained. Emily was clearing the plates, Michael was pouring himself another glass of wine, and I said, "Hey, I noticed some charges on my card I didn't recognize. Nordstrom, a restaurant in West Hollywood, a furniture place in Beverly Hills." Emily turned from the sink. She didn't hesitate, didn't flinch, didn't show even a flicker of anything I could have named as guilt. She dried her hands on the dish towel and said, "Oh gosh, Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I needed a few things for the upstairs bathroom, and I figured since I had the card number I was going to tell you, it just slipped my mind. I'll pay you back this week, I promise." She said it the way people announce they'll return a borrowed pen. Breezy, unconcerned, like the amount were $12 and not $2,000. "Okay," I said. She turned back to the sink. Michael sipped his wine. The conversation moved on to Noah's science fair project, and I sat at that table and felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not yet, but a specific kind of stillness. The kind that comes when your brain registers that something is wrong before your heart is ready to agree. She didn't pay me back that week, or the next. On a Wednesday evening, I went to the desk in my spare bedroom, the one I'd set up as a small office the way I always had one even at home, and I took a fresh notebook from the drawer. Black cover college ruled, the same kind I'd used for 30 years, of site notes and budget reviews. I opened it to the first page, and I wrote the date at the top. Then I wrote down the 3 charges, the amounts, the dates, the merchants. Next to each one, I wrote 4 words: "Did not authorize this." It wasn't anger that moved my hand. It was habit. 38 years of keeping records, because records are the only thing that tells the truth when everyone else is telling you what you want to hear. Over the following 6 weeks, I found 4 more charges. $160 at a drugstore in Los Feliz. $312 at a children's clothing boutique in Atwater Village. $87 at a grocery delivery service I'd never signed up for. $419 at a home goods store on Sunset. I wrote every one of them down. Dates, amounts, merchants. The total climbed past $3,000 and kept going. I noticed the pattern on a Sunday in early January, sitting in my car in the parking structure beneath Emily's house before going up for dinner. I had pulled up the statement on my phone and was looking at the dates, and every single charge, without exception, had been processed on a day when I had taken the kids somewhere. The Natural History Museum, the Huntington Gardens, the Griffith Park Carousel. Every time I had Lily and Noah out of the house, the card had been used. My hand tightened around the phone. I sat in that parking structure for 4 minutes. I know because I watched the time on the dashboard. Then I put the phone in my pocket, picked up the bag of lemon pound cake I'd brought for the kids, and went upstairs for dinner. I smiled when Lily ran to the door. I meant it. Both things were true at the same time. That night after I got home, my phone rang. Not Emily this time. Michael. "Hey, Al," he said, his voice easy and warm. "Hope dinner was good. Hey, I've been thinking, have you given any more thought to the estate planning conversation? I know a guy in Century City, sharp attorney, handles a lot of high net worth clients. No obligation, just a conversation. Might be worth your time. I looked at the open notebook on my desk. The column of numbers. The dates. I'll think about it, Michael, I said. Thanks for calling. I hung up, picked up the pen, and wrote his name at the top of a new page. By the third week of January, the notebook had 11 entries. I sat at my desk on a Sunday morning before driving to Silver Lake and added them up for the first time. The unauthorized charges on the card came to $3,412. The money I had voluntarily offered Kumon the air purifier, the roof contribution added another $4,300. Combined in roughly 3 months, $7,712 had moved from my accounts into Emily and Michael's life. I wrote the total at the bottom of the page and drew a line under it. Then I sat back and looked at it the way I used to look at a budget variance report. Not with emotion, not yet, but with the particular focused attention of a man trying to understand the shape of a problem before he decides what to do about it. $7,000 was not nothing. But it also wasn't the number that sat heavy in my chest that morning. What sat heavy was the column of dates beside the charges. Every single one fell on a day I had the grandkids out of the house. Not once had Emily used the card on a day I was home in Pasadena. Not once on a day I might have been checking my phone. The pattern was too clean to be accidental. Patterns that clean are never accidental. I closed the notebook, put it in the desk drawer, and drove to Silver Lake. Michael was at the grill when I arrived, wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the Cook," in faded letters, the kind of apron that gets given as a gift and used only when there are guests. He shook my hand with the same practiced warmth as always and handed me a cold beer without asking if I wanted one. "Al, good to see you, man." He grinned, flipping a chicken breast with easy confidence. "Hey, did you have the chance to think any more about that Century City attorney I mentioned?" "I did," I said. "I'm not ready to make any moves on the estate side just yet. I like knowing where everything is." Something shifted behind Michael's eyes, quick, almost invisible, the way a card player's expression changes when the hand isn't what he hoped. Then the grin came back easy as ever. "Totally fair, totally fair. No rush at all, Al. Just wanted to put it out there." "I appreciate it," I said. I took my beer to the backyard and sat with Noah, who was explaining with tremendous patience why the Pacific Coast Railroad route he was modeling was historically superior to the transcontinental. I listened and nodded and felt my shoulders drop about 2 inches. Kids tell you true things. They don't have a secondary agenda. At that age, the trains are just trains. It was later in the evening after dinner when the doorbell rang. Emily came out of the kitchen wiping her hands. "Oh, that's Richard and Carol. I should have mentioned I invited them over for dessert." She should have mentioned it. She hadn't. Richard Holt was a big man, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of silver hair that gets called distinguished, and the handshake of someone who had spent decades convincing strangers to trust him with their money. He'd worked insurance sales for 30 years in the Pasadena area. Carol had told me this once briefly, at a holiday gathering 2 years before Patricia died. He'd retired comfortable, she said. He had opinions about investments. He came through the door with a bottle of California Cabernet in one hand and a smile that arrived a half second before his eyes caught up with it. "Al." He gripped my hand firmly, holding it a beat longer than necessary, his eyes moving across my face with an attention that felt less like friendliness and more like assessment. "Good to finally have a real conversation. Emily talks about you all the time." "Good things, I hope," I said. "Only the best." He released my hand and turned to say something to Carol, and I stood there with a cold feeling spreading quietly across my chest that I could not entirely account for. It wasn't anything he'd said. It was the half-second. The eyes catching up late. I had seen that particular timing before across negotiating tables and on job sites, and it always meant the same thing. This man already knew something about me, and he was deciding how to use it. We sat in the living room with the wine and the lemon cake Emily had made. Carol asked about my time at the company, genuine and warm, the kind of questions people ask when they're actually listening. Richard asked about the Long Beach real estate market, specifically what the neighborhood had been doing over the last 5 years, what drove the sale price, whether I'd worked with an agent or gone direct. I answered carefully, pleasantly. I gave him the shape of things without the specifics, but when he asked almost as an aside whether I'd found a good financial advisor since the move, something behind my sternum pulled tight. Because nobody asks that question casually. Nobody asks that question without already knowing the answer they're hoping to hear. I manage things myself, I said. Always have. Richard nodded slowly, like that was interesting information, like he was filing it somewhere. After they left, Emily came to stand beside me while I was pulling on my jacket at the door. "Richard really likes you, Dad," she said. She was smiling and her eyes were warm and she meant it as a nice thing. "Good to know," I said. I drove home on the 210 with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. When I got back to the apartment, I went straight to the desk, opened the notebook, and wrote 2 things on a fresh page. Richard Holt, Pasadena, retired insurance, asks about money, and below that, a question I underlined twice. Why now? Emily called on Thursday to invite me to Sunday dinner, and something in her voice was different. Lighter. The way people sound when they've already decided how a conversation is going to go, and they're pleased about it. Richard and Carol will be there," she said. "He's been wanting to talk to you more. You two seem to really hit it off." I didn't remember hitting it off. I remembered a handshake that lasted a beat too long, and a man whose eyes arrived late to his own smile. But I said, "Sure, Emily. I'll bring the rolls." The drive to Silver Lake that Sunday felt different too, though I couldn't have said exactly why. The city looked the same. The sky was the flat, pale blue of a Southern California February, the kind of blue that gives nothing away. I parked on the street, pulled the bag of sourdough rolls from the passenger seat, and sat for a moment with my hands in my lap. Something was coming. I didn't know what shape it would take. I just knew the way you know when the air pressure changes before a storm. Not a sound, not a sight, just a shift in the weight of things. I went inside. The house was full and warm. Carol had brought a fruit tart from a bakery in San Marino, and Lily was already negotiating to eat dessert before dinner, with the focused determination of a trial attorney. Noah was showing Richard something on his tablet, a video about steam locomotives by the look of it, and Richard was nodding along with the tolerant patience of a man who was waiting for something else to begin. Dinner was good. Emily had made her rosemary chicken, and Michael opened a bottle of Napa Cabernet he'd been saving for something which should have told me something right there. You don't open a bottle you've been saving unless you want the evening to feel like a celebration before it's earned that right. The kids finished eating and went upstairs, Lily dragging a stuffed elephant, Noah already deep in conversation with himself about train schedules. The table settled into adult talk, the wine went around a second time, and I watched Richard refill his glass and lean back in his chair with the ease of a man who was right where he planned to be. "Al," he said, setting the bottle down. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead," I said. "How are you feeling about the money situation? Post-sale, post-move. You feeling comfortable with where things are sitting?" I kept my expression pleasant and my shoulders relaxed. 38 years of contract negotiations had taught me that the first person to show tension loses the room. "I'm doing fine, Richard. Everything's in good order." He nodded slowly. Like that was exactly what he'd expected to hear, and exactly what he'd been hoping to get past. Good, good. Because I've been looking at something down in Palm Springs resort property fractional ownership model. The numbers are genuinely strong. 18% projected return annually conservative estimate. I've got 2 other partners already in. I'm looking for one more at the right level. He paused, swirling his wine. Something in the range of 300,000 would get you a meaningful stake. The table held its breath. I felt it, that collective pause when everyone in the room knows the real conversation has finally started. That's a significant ask, Richard, I said. My voice came out even. I was proud of that. It's a significant opportunity, he said. And then he smiled, the full smile, this time eyes and all, and leaned forward slightly. Al, from what I understand, you walked away with just over 600,000 from the Long Beach sale. Money like that sitting in a savings account is losing value every month against inflation. That's just math. The floor shifted under me, not visibly. I didn't move. My hands stayed flat on the table, my face stayed neutral. My breathing stayed slow and measured, the way I'd trained it to be across decades of moments when I needed to think faster than I could afford to show. But somewhere behind my sternum something dropped like a stone into cold water, and the ripples moved all the way out to my fingertips. 600,000. The exact number. Not approximately. Not roughly. The exact figure I had shared with one person, and one person only. I turned my head slowly, unhurried, and looked at Emily. She was looking at her wine glass. Her thumb was moving in a small circle on the stem over and over, the way people move when they know they're being watched and are working very hard not to show it. She didn't look up. She didn't reach for a roll. She just kept her eyes down and her thumb moving and let the moment pass over her like weather. My chest tightened until I could feel my own heartbeat in my throat. "Richard," I said, turning back to him, my voice as steady as I could keep it. "I appreciate you thinking of me, but that's not a decision I'd make quickly or lightly. I'd need time." Richard's smile stayed in place, but something behind it cooled by exactly 1 degree. "Of course," he said. "No pressure at all. Just something to think about." "I'll do that," I said. I excused myself to use the restroom. I stood at the sink with the water running and looked at myself in the mirror for 30 seconds. My jaw was tight. I made it relax. My hands wanted to grip the edge of the counter. I let them hang loose at my sides instead. Then I dried my hands, straightened my shirt, and walked back out to the table with a smile that cost me more than anyone at that table would ever know. Dessert was Carol's fruit tart. It was excellent. I complimented her on it twice. I helped clear the plates. And when I went to get my jacket from the hook by the door, I passed through the hallway and stopped. The light in the study was on. The door was not quite closed. And through the gap, I could hear Emily's voice, low and quick and entirely different from the voice she used at the table. I did not move. I did not go in. I stood in that hallway in the dark, and I listened. The hallway was dark, except for the thin line of yellow light coming from under the study door. I stood with my jacket folded over one arm and my car keys in my hand, and I did not breathe for what felt like a very long time. Emily's voice was low, not a whisper, just the particular quietness of someone who believes they are alone in a house and has stopped performing for an audience. I had heard that voice before. 38 years ago, the night before I signed the papers on the first major contract, Carter Construction ever landed, I stayed late at the office and heard my own accountant on the phone with someone using that same voice, low, unguarded reel. I had walked away that night without confronting him. I had also never given him access to another document again. Some lessons you only need to learn once. Michael spoke first, his voice tight in a way I had never heard from him across a dinner table. Are you sure he's actually going to move on this? Because Richard is pushing hard, and we are out of time, Emily. We are genuinely out of time. I know. Emily's voice was quick and clipped. I know that. Just give me a little more room to work. We don't have room. I told you what the situation is with Newport Beach. If we don't get in front of this by the end of the month, Michael. Her voice sharpened. I said I know. Stop. A pause. The sound of something being set down on the desk, a glass maybe, or a phone. Then Michael quieter. What if he says no? What if he just flat out says no and that's it? The silence that followed was not empty. It had texture and weight, the kind that comes before something irreversible gets said out loud. I felt it in my chest, like a drop in air pressure. My fingers tightened around the car keys until the teeth bit into my palm. Emily said, "He won't say no. He never says no to me. But if for some reason..." A pause. The sound of a drawer. I already have his card. Michael's voice changed. What do you mean you already have his card? I mean I have it. Her tone was almost bored. Patient the way you are patient with someone who is asking you to explain something obvious. When he asked me to handle those bills online last fall, I saved everything. The card number, the billing address, the security code, all of it. I've been using it for months, Michael. He's never said a word. The keys in my hand were drawing blood. I didn't move. Not Emily. Michael's voice had dropped to something I could barely hear. Are you listening to yourself? That's his card. That's not ours. It's fine. She said it quickly, firmly, the way people say things they have already convinced themselves of. He has so much money, he doesn't track it the way normal people do. You know what he is, Michael? He's a walking ATM. That's it. You know exactly what to put in. You say family, you say the grandkids, you say I need you, Dad, and he opens right up. Every single time. He doesn't even question it. My throat closed. Not from anger. I want to be clear about that. Because I have thought about that moment many times since turning it over in the particular way you turn over something you found at the bottom of a drawer and aren't sure how to feel about. It wasn't anger that moved through me standing in that hallway. It was something quieter and much, much worse. It was the specific pain of a truth you have been half knowing for a long time, finally saying itself out loud in a voice you love. Michael said, "How much does he actually have right now in the accounts?" And Emily told him. She didn't approximate. She didn't say roughly or around or somewhere in the neighborhood of. She read the numbers the way you read numbers when you have been checking them regularly, the checking account balance, the savings account balance, the CD amount, and its maturity date with the flat, practiced efficiency of someone for whom these figures are familiar. My finances, my retirement. The sum total of 38 years of work and Patricia's sacrifices, and every Friday afternoon I had spent at a desk instead of somewhere else, read back to her husband in a voice that did not shake, because there was nothing in it to shake. He loves you too much to ever make this a real problem, Michael said. It wasn't a question. It sounded like a conclusion he had already reached, and was simply confirming. He always forgives me, Emily said. He always will. I took one step back from the door, then another. The floorboards in that hallway were old, and I moved the way I had learned to move on job sites, carefully, deliberately, no sudden shifts in weight. I walked back through the living room, past the dining table where the wine glasses still had fingerprints on them, past Carol's fruit tart, with one slice missing, past the framed school photos of Lily and Noah, arranged on the shelf by the front window. I picked up my jacket. I opened the front door. I stepped outside into the February night, which was cold and clear in the way Los Angeles sometimes manages in February, when the Santa Ana winds have scrubbed the sky clean. I stood on the porch for exactly 3 seconds. Then I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove. I didn't put the radio on. I didn't call anyone. I merged onto the 210 heading east toward Pasadena, and I drove in the particular silence of a man who has just heard something he cannot unhear, something that has rearranged the furniture of the last 4 months into a shape he recognizes now and wishes he didn't. The mountains were invisible in the dark. The freeway was nearly empty. The heater ran and the engine ran, and somewhere around the Arcadia exit I became aware that my jaw was clenched so tight it had started to ache. I made it relax. I made my hands loosen on the wheel, and I thought about Patricia, not the way I usually thought about her, with grief and longing and the hollow ache of absence. I thought about her the way you think about someone whose judgment you trusted completely and who is no longer there to ask. What would you do, I thought, toward the dark outside the window? No answer came. Just the hum of the engine and the white lines of the freeway moving under me, and the slow, clarifying cold of understanding exactly what I was dealing with. By the time I pulled into the parking structure in Pasadena, I knew 2 things. I was not going to say anything tonight, and I was not going to let this continue for another day. I didn't sleep, not because I was upset, or not only because of that. I didn't sleep because my mind had shifted into a mode I recognized from 38 years of running a company. The mode that kicks in when something has gone wrong, and the only useful thing left to do is figure out exactly how wrong and exactly what comes next. It's not a comfortable mode. It's not supposed to be. But it is a functional one, and that night functional was what I needed. I sat at my desk from midnight until nearly 5 in the morning with the notebook open and a legal pad beside it, and worked through everything I knew. I wrote down the charges, all of them in order with dates. I wrote down the pattern, the days, the timing, the correlation with my outings with the grandkids. I wrote down what I had heard in that hallway, as close to verbatim as I could reconstruct it, with quotation marks around the phrases I was certain of. Walking ATM, he always forgives me. He always will. I wrote down Richard's exact words at the dinner table, just over 600,000, and the way Emily had looked at her wine glass instead of at me when he said it. When I was done, I had 4 pages of notes and a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I made coffee at 5:15. Real coffee, not the pod machine. I measured the grounds, boiled the water to the right temperature, let it steep. Patricia had given me the French press the Christmas before she got sick. I had used it maybe 3 times while she was alive, because there was never enough time in the morning. I used it every day now. Some things you learn to appreciate too late, and the only dignified response to that is to appreciate them fully going forward. I drank my coffee on the balcony in the dark and watched the San Gabriel Mountains turn from black to gray to the pale gold of early morning. And I thought about what I was going to do. Not what I was going to say. What I was going to do. There's a difference, and it matters. At 8 minutes past 8, I called Wells Fargo. The representative who answered was named Brandon, and he was professional and efficient, and did not ask unnecessary questions, which I appreciated. I told him I needed to report potential unauthorized use of my credit card and request an immediate cancellation and replacement. I told him I needed to open a new checking account and transfer the balance of my existing savings account into it. I told him I wanted the new card mailed to an address I provided my P.O. box on Lake Avenue, which I had maintained for years for miscellaneous business mail, and which appeared on no document that Emily had ever seen. Brandon confirmed each action as he completed it. The old card was canceled at 8:14. The new account was opened at 8:21. The savings transfer, $180,000, was initiated at 8:23 and would be reflected by end of business. I thanked Brandon and ended the call. Then I called a locksmith. The man arrived at 10 o'clock, a heavy-set guy named Greg, who smelled like sawdust and moved with the unhurried efficiency of someone who had changed 10,000 locks and found the work neither interesting nor unpleasant, just work. He replaced the deadbolt and the handle lock on the front door and the lock on the sliding balcony door in 40 minutes flat, handed me 2 new keys, took his check, and left. I stood in the middle of my living room with the 2 new keys in my palm. The apartment felt different. Not safer exactly, but more mine. I went back to the desk and opened the notebook to a fresh page. I wrote the date at the top. Then I wrote one sentence slowly with the particular care you give to something you want to remember exactly as you thought it. Forgiveness and foolishness are not the same thing. I read it back. I meant every word of it. I closed the notebook. Emily called at 3:47 that afternoon. Her voice was warm and easy. The Sunday dinner voice, the voice that had been pulling at something in my chest for 68 years. "Hey, Dad. How are you doing? Wasn't last night fun? I think Richard and Dad are really going to sorry. I mean, Richard really enjoyed talking to you." She had started to say Richard and Dad, caught herself, corrected it. I noted that. "It was a nice evening," I said. "Good. Hey, so Michael has been talking more about that Palm Springs thing. And I think if you just sat down with Richard for an hour, really heard the details." "Emily." My voice came out quiet, completely steady. "No." A beat of silence. Then, "Sorry." "No," I said again. "I won't be doing that. I won't be making that investment, and I won't be sitting down with Richard to discuss it. That's my decision, and it's final." The warmth drained out of her voice, the way heat leaves a room when a window opens in winter. "Dad, what I don't understand. Why are you being like this? We're just trying to help you do something smart with your money." "Emily." I kept my voice the same, level, unhurried. The voice I used when a contractor tried to renegotiate a signed deal. "I love you. I'll talk to you soon." I ended the call. I set the phone face down on the desk and sat with my hands flat on the table and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way Patricia had taught me after my first serious contract dispute 30 years ago, when I'd come home so wound up I couldn't eat dinner. "You have to breathe through it," she'd said. "The anger doesn't help you think. Let it move through and come out the other side." I breathed through it. On the other side was not calm exactly, but it was clear, and clear was enough. 3 days passed. Emily did not call. Michael did not call. Richard did not call. The silence from Silver Lake was total, and I suspected deliberate, the silence of people who are regrouping, reassessing, deciding what to try next. On the 4th evening, just after 7, my doorbell rang. I looked at the camera feed on my phone. Emily stood in the hallway outside my apartment, her arms crossed over her chest, her eyes red at the edges. She was not holding a key. The old one wouldn't have worked anyway. I took one breath. Then I went to open the door. "Before we go further," Alvin just said no to his own daughter for the very first time. "Drop the number 9 in the comments if you're still with me. I read every single one. Heads up, this story contains some fictional elements crafted for reflection and storytelling. If that's not your thing, no hard feelings. This is a good place to step away. But if you're staying, I'm glad." She looked smaller than I remembered. That was the first thing I noticed when I opened the door. Not the red around her eyes, Not the way her arms were still crossed tight over her chest, like she was holding herself together from the outside. Just that she looked smaller. My daughter, who had filled every room she walked into since she was 4 years old, who had argued her way through high school debate and talked her way into her first accounting job with nothing but a 2-year degree and absolute confidence, she looked like she had spent 3 days shrinking. Dad. Her voice cracked on the word. Just the one word, just my name, and her eyes filled so fast I almost reached for her. Almost. Come in, I said instead. She walked past me into the living room. She looked at the door handle, the new one brushed nickel instead of the old brass, and her jaw tightened for just a moment before she smoothed it back out. She sat on the couch without being asked, pulled her sleeves down over her wrists, and looked up at me with eyes that were doing the complicated work of producing tears and performing sincerity at the same time. I sat in the armchair across from her. I did not offer coffee. I did not fill the space with small talk. I had spent 3 days preparing for this conversation, and I was not going to let the shape of it be determined by someone else. You changed the locks, she said. Her voice was still unsteady, wobbling at the edges. On your own apartment. You changed the locks, and you didn't tell me. I did, I said. Why? The word came out raw, genuinely wounded, and I felt it land, felt the familiar pull of it in my chest, the reflex that had been built over 68 years of being her father. The reflex that said fix it, make it better, say the thing that stops the tears. I felt it. I did not follow it. Because it was my apartment and my lock, I said. And I had reasons. Emily pressed her lips together. Her chin trembled once, then steadied. Dad, I don't know what happened the other night, but you've pulled away from us completely. You won't take my calls, you canceled Sunday dinner, and now you're changing locks like I'm some kind of... Her voice broke. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth for a moment. Then, I'm your daughter. I am your daughter. I know who you are, Emily. Then why are you treating me like this? Her voice rose sharp and sudden the way it used to when she was 17 and felt she was being misunderstood. I have been trying to help you since Mom died. I have been there for you. I have included you. I have made sure you see the kids every single week, and you're sitting there looking at me like I'm a stranger. How much money have you charged to my card? I said, without asking me. The question dropped into the room like something heavy. Emily's mouth stayed open for a half second after she stopped speaking, that small gap between what she'd planned to say and what had just changed. Her eyes cut away from mine, to the window, to the bookshelf, back to her hands. Dad. Emily. My voice did not rise. I kept it exactly where it was, level quiet, the temperature of something that has been thought about for a very long time. I have the statements. I have the dates. I know the pattern. I'm not asking you to explain it to me. I'm asking you to answer the question. Her chin wobbled again. Then, in a voice gone small and tight, things have been hard. Michael's business has had a rough stretch, and we've had expenses, and I thought since the card was there. Without asking me, I said again. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and something shifted in her face from grief into something faster and harder, the shift that happens when someone realizes that tears are not going to move the obstacle in front of them. You have so much, Dad. You have more than you'll ever spend. I didn't think it would. I thought it was fine. I thought you wouldn't. She stopped, swallowed. I was going to tell you. When? No answer came. I leaned forward in my chair, my elbows on my knees, my hands loose between them. I looked at my daughter. Daughter really looked the way I hadn't let myself do in weeks, because looking clearly at someone you love is sometimes the hardest thing there is. Her eyes were red. Her mascara had tracked down one cheek and she hadn't fixed it. She was scared. I could see that. I could also see underneath the fear that she had come here with a plan that was not working and was improvising around the edges of it. And the improvisation looked a great deal like manipulation. And I was tired, bone-tired, the specific exhaustion of a man who has been hoping he was wrong about something for a very long time. "So bring the kids over for dinner," she said suddenly. Her voice had shifted again soft, the warmth returning like a dial being turned. "This weekend, just us. Lily has been asking about you every day, Dad. She misses you. Noah finished the signal light on the train set, and he wants to show you. Just come. Come to dinner, and we'll talk through everything, I promise. Just don't," I said. She stopped. "Don't bring the children into this." My voice came out with an edge I hadn't intended, not anger exactly, but something adjacent to it. Something that had been pressed flat for months and had finally found 1 inch of space to move. Lily and Noah are not a bargaining chip. They are my grandchildren, and I love them, and my relationship with them has nothing to do with this conversation. Do you understand me? Emily stared at me. Her lips parted. Then she tried the last thing she had. Mom would want us to work this out, she said quietly. You know she would. She would hate seeing us like this, Dad. She would hate it. The room went very still. I felt it move through me, the sound of Patricia's name in that context used that way, like a key being tried in a lock it was never meant for. My hands tightened on my knees. My jaw ached. Something hot moved up the back of my throat, and I held it there, breathed through it, let it subside. When I spoke, my voice was lower than it had been all evening. Your mother spent 43 years building something with me, I said. She worked and sacrificed and trusted me to protect what we had together. Don't tell me what she would want. Don't put her name on this. That is the one thing I am asking you not to do. Emily looked at her father for a long moment. Whatever she saw there made her close her mouth. She stood up. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door without saying another word, and I heard the new lock click shut behind her, with the precise final sound of a thing that has been decided. I sat in the armchair for a while after she left. My hands were shaking just slightly, just enough to notice, and I pressed them flat against my thighs until they stopped. I looked at Patricia's photograph on the kitchen windowsill, the one from Carmel, her laughing, head tilted back. I know, I said to the photograph. I know. I made myself get up. I made myself go to the kitchen, pour a glass of water, drink half of it standing at the sink. Then I went down the hall to the bathroom to wash my face. The cystine bottle was on the left side of the counter where it always was, except the cap was not the way I left it. I was a man of fixed habits. The cap went on with a quarter turn and the label faced forward. The cap was on, but it was facing sideways, and the bottle itself was 2 inches to the right of where I kept it. I stood at the bathroom counter and looked at that bottle for a long time. Then I went to the kitchen, found a small Ziploc bag and put the bottle inside it. I sealed it. I put it in the locked drawer of my desk. I took the backup bottle from the cabinet in my bedroom, the one I'd bought 6 weeks ago, and never opened, and set it on the bathroom counter where the other one had been. I went back to my desk. I opened the notebook. Wrote the date, the time, and 4 sentences. The cystine bottle moved, cap facing the wrong direction. Label not aligned. putting the original bottle aside. Below that, I wrote one more line and I underlined it. Emily was alone in this apartment today. Think about that. 2 days after Emily left, she called to apologize. Not a real apology, I want to be accurate about that. It was the kind of apology that is mostly architecture built to create the impression of contrition without actually conceding anything specific. She was sorry things had gotten tense. She was sorry if she had made me feel unappreciated. She had been under a lot of pressure, and she hadn't handled things well, and she missed me, and the whole situation had gotten out of hand. Notice what was not in that apology. No mention of the card. No mention of the charges. No mention of the conversation I had heard through a half-open door in a dark hallway 2 weeks before. I accepted it anyway. Not because I believed it. Because I wanted to see what came next. "Can I bring you lunch Saturday?" she asked. Her voice had found its warmth again, the specific warmth that had been pulling at me since she was old enough to talk. "There's that Thai place on Fair Oaks you like. I'll get the curry." "Sure," I said. "That sounds nice." Saturday arrived gray and cool, the kind of February morning that can't decide whether it wants to be winter or not. Emily knocked at 11:30 exactly. She had always been punctual, one of the few habits she and I shared, without either of us ever remarking on it. And when I opened the door, she was standing there with a brown paper bag in each hand and a smile that was doing its level best to look uncomplicated. "Hey, Dad." She leaned in and kissed my cheek. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn since college. "You look good. You're getting some color back." "It's February," I said. "I don't have any color." She laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her. And for just a moment, she was 22 years old again. And I was dropping her off at her first apartment, and she was laughing at something I'd said in the elevator, and neither of us knew yet all the ways things would eventually go. I felt that moment pass through me like a weather system. Quick, complete, gone. We sat at the kitchen table with the curry and rice and the green papaya salad she'd remembered I liked. She told me about Noah's science fair. He'd entered the train signal project and placed second, which he considered an injustice of the highest order. She told me Lily had adopted a classroom hamster named Gerald for the week and was treating the responsibility with the gravity of a field surgeon. I laughed at that. I meant it. This was the thing that made everything so complicated and so hard. The love was real. Whatever else was also true, the love underneath it was real, and sitting at that table eating curry and hearing about Gerald the hamster, I felt it solid and painful and entirely genuine. "I'm glad you came," I said, and I meant that too. Emily looked at me across the table with something moving behind her eyes that I couldn't quite read. "Me too, Dad," she said quietly. "Me too." After we ate, I stood to clear the containers. "You want coffee?" I asked, moving toward the kitchen. "I've got the French press." "Please," she said. "You know I love your coffee." I measured the grounds. I boiled the water. The French press took 4 minutes to steep properly, which meant I was in the kitchen for somewhere between 6 and 8 minutes in total. Long enough to hear Emily moving around in the living room, the soft sounds of someone who is not quite sitting still. I did not think about it at the time. I was thinking about the coffee and about Gerald the hamster and about the particular quality of my daughter's laugh when it was real. I brought the coffee out on a tray with 2 mugs and the small ceramic creamer Patricia had bought at a market in Santa Barbara the summer before she got sick. Emily was sitting exactly where I'd left her, both hands in her lap, her phone face down on the table. She smiled when I set the tray down. We drank our coffee and talked for another 30 minutes, easy talk, the kind that costs nothing and means something anyway. When she left, she hugged me at the door, and the hug was long and genuine, and her shoulders shook just slightly when she pulled away. and I stood in the doorway, watching her walk to the elevator, and felt the complicated weight of loving someone you can no longer fully trust. I closed the door. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking at the tray, the two empty mugs, the Santa Barbara creamer. Then I walked down the hall to the bathroom. The cystine bottle, the backup bottle, the one I'd put out after Emily's last visit, was on the left side of the counter where I'd placed it. The label was facing forward. The cap was on with a quarter-turn label aligned. Except, my hand reached out and picked it up before my brain had finished forming the thought. I turned it over, set it down, picked it up again. The weight was different. Not dramatically, not in any way a person would notice if they weren't paying close attention, if they hadn't been using the same product for 6 years, and didn't know its weight in their hand the way they knew their own keys or their own phone. But I paid close attention. I had been paying close attention for weeks, and the bottle in my hand was lighter than it should have been. I set it down on the counter very carefully. My heart had begun to move faster in my chest, not pounding, not racing, just elevated the way it got during contract disputes, when the numbers stopped adding up, and I realized I was looking at something that had been constructed to deceive me. A specific, focused acceleration. Recognition. I did not touch the bottle again. I went to the kitchen, found another Ziploc bag. I had bought a box of them after the first incident, and came back and placed the bottle inside without touching the label or the cap. Sealed it. Labeled it with the date and time in black marker. Then I went to the bedroom cabinet and found the second backup bottle. The one I had bought 3 weeks ago and hidden in a box of old tax documents on the top shelf. The one Emily had never seen and could not have known about. I opened it, verified the seal was intact, and put it in the bathroom. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while after that. My hands were steady. I made note of that. After the night Emily had come to the door, and I'd pressed them flat against my thighs to stop the trembling, my hands had finally gone steady. I wasn't sure what that meant. Maybe that I was past the part where this surprised me. Maybe that grief, when it runs long enough and deep enough, eventually finds its floor and stops dropping. I thought about calling someone. Marcus Webb's name had been in the back of my mind for 2 weeks. A man I'd worked with briefly during a contract dispute in 2016, a former LAPD detective who had gone private and whom I had found in that situation to be precise and discreet, and very good at finding things that other people had tried to make unfindable. Not yet, I decided. Not yet. I needed one more thing first. I went to my desk, opened the notebook, and wrote the entry for the day. Date, time, description, observations. At the bottom, I wrote second bottle. Same pattern. She was in this apartment today. She had opportunity. This is no longer something I can explain away. I closed the notebook and sat in the quiet of the apartment. Outside, the February sky had finally made up its mind and gone to rain, the drops tapping steadily against the balcony glass. I listened to it for a while. Then I picked up my phone and looked up a number I had not dialed in 8 years. And I thought, after Sunday. After one more Sunday. Then I'll know enough. The Sunday I had been waiting for arrived clear and cold, the kind of Los Angeles morning that makes you remember why people come here in the first place. The sky, a hard, clean blue, the San Gabriel Mountains sharp against it, like something cut from paper. I was not going to Silver Lake. I had made that decision quietly sometime in the middle of the week, without drama and without announcement. I had texted Emily that I wasn't feeling up to dinner, and she had replied with a string of concerned questions that I answered briefly and then let go. What I was going to do instead was drive down to Santa Monica to see Frank DeLuca, my oldest friend from the Carter construction days, a man who had known Patricia since before we were married, and who never asked me how I was doing, because he could always tell just by looking. I used the second backup bottle, the one from the tax document box, seal intact, unopened until that morning. I tilted my head back at the bathroom mirror, administered the drops the way I had done every morning for 6 years, blinked twice, and picked up my keys. The drive down was easy. I took the 210 to the 110 south, merged onto the 10 heading west toward Santa Monica, and the city opened up around me the way it does on a clear Sunday, wide and bright and almost forgiving. I had the window cracked 2 inches. The air smelled like eucalyptus and something like rain that had happened somewhere else. I was thinking about Frank, about the lunch we'd planned, clam chowder at his usual place on Ocean Avenue, the one with the plastic baskets and the view of the pier, about how good it would feel to sit across from someone who knew me before any of this, before the last 16 months, before everything that had accumulated in that black notebook in my desk drawer. I was not thinking about the white Chevy Tahoe that ran the red light at the intersection of Sunset and Crescent Heights. It came from the left. Fast, no brake lights, the particular velocity of someone who had decided the yellow meant go and misjudged the timing by 2 full seconds. I had half a moment to register the white mass of it filling my driver's side window before the impact came, a sound like the world folding in on itself. And then the airbag was in my face, and the car was stopped at an angle I hadn't put it in, and everything smelled like burnt powder and hot metal. I sat very still for a moment. Took inventory. My left shoulder had hit the door during the impact and was throbbing in a way that suggested bruising, rather than anything structural. My left knee had caught the console and was tender when I bent it. My head was clear. My hands gripping the steering wheel were shaking, the involuntary kind, the kind the body produces on its own without consulting you. I unclenched my fingers, breathed, looked out the cracked windshield at the intersection. The Tahoe had come to rest against the curb on the far side. The driver, a young man in his 20s, was already out of the vehicle with his hands on his head, looking back at me with an expression of pure horror. Officer James Carroll arrived 7 minutes later, a lean, efficient man in his 40s, who moved through the scene with the unhurried authority of someone who had worked accidents long enough to know exactly what each one required. He took my statement, took the other driver's statement, pointed at the traffic camera mounted on the signal pole above us, and told me the footage would confirm everything I'd described. It did, as I learned later. The other driver received the citation. He had run a red light at 41 miles per hour. None of what happened was my fault, and none of it had anything to do with the bottles in my Ziploc bags at home. The paramedics insisted on transport. I did not argue. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center sat on Beverly Boulevard, like it had been there since before the city decided to grow up around it. They put me in a bay in the emergency department, checked my shoulder and knee, ordered x-rays that came back clean, and told me I would be sore for a week and should ice the shoulder. Routine. Manageable. Dr. Sandra Okafor came in while I was waiting for the discharge paperwork. She was a compact woman in her mid-50s with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and the particular manner of someone who has delivered a great deal of difficult news and learned to be precise without being cold. She introduced herself as the attending ophthalmologist on call standard protocol. After any vehicle accident involving a driver over 65, she explained to rule out vision-related contributing factors. She asked me what eye drops I used. I told her Systane. She asked if I had them with me. I looked at her for a moment. Then I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. The Ziploc bag had been there since I'd left the apartment that morning, because some part of me had decided without articulating it to myself that I should keep it close, and I placed it on the tray beside the bed. Dr. Okafor looked at the sealed bag, then at me. She picked it up carefully, turned it over, examined the bottle through the plastic without opening the bag. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice dropping half a register, "this isn't Systane." My shoulder was throbbing. My knee was stiff. and somewhere in my chest, something that had been held in suspension for 2 weeks finally landed. "No," I said. I didn't think it was. She looked at me steadily over the top of her glasses. "I'm going to send this to the lab, and I need to ask you something." She set the bag down. "Who has access to your home?" I thought about a Saturday afternoon, a brown paper bag with curry inside, a French press taking 6 minutes to steep, the soft sounds of someone moving in a room they thought was empty. "One person," I said. Dr. Okafor nodded slowly. She wrote something in her chart. "I'll flag this for the attending physician as well," she said. "Mr. Carter, if what I'm thinking's correct, you're going to want to make some calls." Emily and Michael arrived 40 minutes later. Emily came through the curtain first, her face crumpled with what looked like fear, and she crossed the space between the door and the bed in 3 steps and took my hand in both of hers. Her hands were cold. Her eyes were wet. "Dad," her voice broke. "Dad, I was so scared. Are you okay? What happened?" I looked at my daughter holding my hand at the side of a hospital bed and felt the full, terrible weight of everything that was true at once. That she loved me, that she had done what she had done, that both of those things were real and neither one canceled the other out. "I'm fine," I said. "Just some bruising." She pressed my hand against her cheek. Michael stood behind her with his arms crossed, watching me with an expression I had learned to read over the past months. Not concern, but calculation. Assessing the situation. Measuring the distance between where things were and where he needed them to go. I watched him watch me, and I kept my face still and warm and entirely unreadable. When they left an hour later, I waited until the curtain stopped moving. Then I took out my phone. I said when he picked up. "It's Alvin Carter. I need to see you. Tomorrow morning if you can." A pause. Then, "I'll be here at 8, Marcus said. "Bring everything you have." They discharged me Monday afternoon, with a prescription for anti-inflammatories, an ice pack, and instructions to rest the shoulder for 10 days. Emily was waiting in the pickup area in her car hazard lights, blinking a thermos of soup on the passenger seat. She helped me with my seatbelt without asking if I needed help, and I let her because some battles are not worth the energy, and because part of me, the part that had been her father for 38 years, was still capable of being moved by the sight of her taking care of me. She stayed through Tuesday. Cooked, tidied, made sure I iced the shoulder every 4 hours. She was attentive and quiet in a way that felt rehearsed, the way an actor is quiet in a scene they've prepared for. I watched her move through my apartment and thought about Gerald the hamster and the curry from Fair Oaks and the laugh I'd heard surprised out of her, and all the ways love refuses to simplify itself, no matter how much easier that would be. Wednesday morning, she sat across from me at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and a manila folder she placed between us with the careful deliberateness of someone who has been waiting for the right moment. "Dad," she said. "I talked to an attorney. After the accident, it just made me realize how quickly things can change, and I think we need to make sure you're protected." She opened the folder. Clean white pages, typed paragraphs, signature lines at the bottom. "It's a durable power of attorney. It means if anything ever happens, if you're incapacitated, if you need someone to handle things, I can step in immediately. Without it, everything gets complicated and slow, and you'd be stuck waiting on courts and paperwork." I picked up the document. Read it slowly, every line the way I had read contracts for 38 years. It was comprehensive. Checking accounts, savings accounts, investment decisions, real estate transactions. Every financial instrument I owned transferred to Emily's control the moment I signed. "This is a significant document?" I said. Her hands tightened around her mug. "It's just a precaution, Dad. Give me a few days to think about it." Something flickered across her face. Relief, I thought that I hadn't said no outright. "Of course," she said. "Take all the time you need." She left at noon. I waited until I heard the elevator doors close. Then I called Gloria Park. I had found her name 3 weeks earlier through a colleague who had gone through something similar with an aging parent. A Los Angeles attorney who specialized in elder financial abuse cases with 20 years of experience and a reputation, my colleague said, for being the kind of lawyer that opposing counsel dreaded walking into a room with. "Don't sign a single page," Gloria said before I had finished describing the document. Her voice was precise and unhurried, the voice of someone who had seen this particular play performed many times. "A durable POA with those provisions gives her complete financial control. That's not protection, that's transfer of ownership. Do not sign it." "I wasn't planning to," I said, "but I want to use it." A pause. "Use it how?" I told her what I was thinking. When I finished, she was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, "That's actually very smart. Let me explain how to do it legally." Under California law, I was entitled to record any conversation I was personally participating in without notifying the other party. One-party consent. Gloria walked me through the specifics, what device to use, where to place it, what to say, to draw out the information I needed without coaching or entrapment. The following afternoon, I called Emily and told her I had thought it over and had some questions about the document. Could she come by and walk me through it? She arrived within the hour. I had positioned my phone voice memo running on the kitchen counter behind the fruit bowl angled toward the table. Legal. Documented. Ready. Emily sat across from me with the folder open, patient and warm, walking through each provision with the practiced fluency of someone who had studied this document until she knew it the way she knew her own address. "So once this is in place," I said carefully, "you'd be able to handle everything, the accounts, the investments, the decisions." Her shoulders relaxed by exactly 1 degree. "Everything," she said. "You wouldn't have to worry about any of it, Dad. I'd handle it all. And I wouldn't need to check on anything. Not a thing." She reached across and put her hand over mine. Her grip was warm and steady. "I'd take care of everything. That's what this is for." I nodded slowly. "Let me sleep on it one more night." She left, smiling. I sat at the table after she was gone, the fruit bowl in front of me, the phone still recording 2 seconds of silence before I reached over and stopped it. I looked at the manila folder she had left behind, left deliberately, I was certain, so it would be there in the morning when I woke up and reached for it. My phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. Alvin. His voice was flat in the way it got when he had something to tell me that he didn't want to have to say. "The lab results came back on that first bottle. You need to come in tomorrow morning. Bring the second one, too." My hand tightened around the phone. "I'll be there at 8, I said. "Before I show you what Marcus found, what Alvin was about to learn would shatter everything." Type "still here" in the comments right now. Let me know you're with me for this. A gentle note: parts of this story include fictional elements added for depth and storytelling. It may not reflect every detail exactly, and if that's not for you, it's okay to step away now. Otherwise, let's finish this together. Marcus Webb's office was on the 8th floor of a building on South Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of office that told you exactly what kind of work happened there. No artwork on the walls, no plants, just a white whiteboard, 2 monitors, and filing cabinets that locked. He and Gloria Park were both already there when I arrived at 8. Gloria stood when I came in, a compact Korean-American woman in her late 40s, with sharp eyes behind frameless glasses, and the kind of stillness that comes from having sat across from a great many people who were lying to her. She shook my hand and said, "Mr. Carter, I've been looking at your financials since Marcus called me last night. We have a lot to cover." We sat. Marcus opened a folder. The lab results came first. Both bottles had been analyzed. The first contained tetrahydrozoline, a chemical found in certain over-the-counter redness relief drops, not in dry eye treatment, and one that, when administered in sufficient concentration, causes temporary blurred vision, dizziness, and impaired motor function in drivers. The second bottle, from Emily's most recent visit, contained the same compound at a slightly lower concentration. Neither bottle was cysteine. Neither bottle was safe for a man with my eye condition to use before operating a vehicle. I sat with that information for a moment. Let it settle into a place where I could look at it clearly. The camera footage, Marcus said, moving on with the particular efficiency of someone who understood that letting me sit too long with any one piece of this would not help either of us. He turned his laptop toward me. The building security footage showed Emily in the lobby of my Pasadena apartment building, timestamp from the Saturday she'd brought curry. She carried 2 bags going in. Coming out, she carried 2 bags plus something small in her left hand that she slipped into her jacket pocket before she reached the door. The CVS footage was clearer. 2 days before her visit, Emily stood at a pharmacy counter in Silver Lake, purchasing a small bottle of eye drops. The brand was not cysteine. I looked at the screen for a long time. My chest felt very tight and very quiet, the way a room feels after something loud has stopped. "There's more," Gloria said. She laid out the financial analysis on the table between us, 12 months of my account statements, annotated in red. The pattern was clean and deliberate. $127,400 had moved from my accounts into 3 LLCs over 8 months through transactions ranging from $800 to $4,900, small enough to avoid automatic fraud flags, frequent enough to accumulate fast. These 3 companies, Marcus said, tapping the page, were incorporated in Delaware 5 months before you put your Long Beach house on the market. Delaware registration is common when people want their financial activity to be difficult to trace from California. He looked at me directly. "They planned this before you listed the house, Alvin." The floor did not move. I am proud of that. I kept my hands flat on the table and my breathing slow, and I looked at the page and understood that the people I was looking at in those account numbers had been looking at me, at my grief, at my love for my grandchildren, at my trust, and seeing an opportunity. For months before I even knew I needed to protect myself. "There's one more thing," Gloria said. She placed a single sheet on top of the others. A property record, an Encino address, a down payment of $43,000 traced from one of the LLCs, the buyer on record, Michael's parents. My money, their house. "Is there enough to press charges?" I asked. Gloria looked at me steadily. "More than enough." I nodded once, looked at the whiteboard, looked at my hands. "Then let's do it," I said. I drove back to Pasadena alone. Gloria had walked me through the next steps before I left. She would file with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office by end of week. The charges would include financial elder abuse under California Welfare and Institutions Code Section 15610.30 wire fraud, under federal statute identity theft and elder abuse, causing risk of great bodily injury related to the eye drops. She would handle everything. I did not need to appear anywhere or speak to anyone until she told me to. I thanked her. I shook Marcus's hand. I took the elevator down 8 floors and walked out onto South Figueroa Street. into the mid-morning Los Angeles sun and stood on the sidewalk for a moment with my car keys in my hand and nowhere urgent to be for the first time in months. I drove home. The apartment was quiet in the particular way it gets on a weekday morning, when the building is mostly empty and the street noise hasn't picked up yet. I went to the desk, unlocked the drawer, and took out the notebook. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat down and opened it to the first page. The first entry. $800. Kumon. October. I turned the pages slowly, each one a week of my life. Each entry a small decision I had made in good faith that had been received as an invitation to take more. I turned to the last page, the entry from the night I had found the second bottle, the 4 sentences I had written with the overhead light on, and my hands steadier than they had any right to be. I closed the notebook. I looked at Patricia's photograph on the kitchen windowsill, the Carmel photo. Her laughing head tilted back, the Pacific going silver behind her. "I wish you were here," I said out loud. My voice came out rougher than I expected, and I felt it move through my chest. Not the sharp grief of the early months, but something older and quieter. The grief that has settled in and made itself at home. "But I think you'd understand. I think you'd know I didn't have a choice." The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed on the street below. I got up, put the notebook in the kitchen drawer, not locked, not hidden, just put away, and picked up my phone. Emily answered on the second ring, her voice carefully neutral in the way it had been since the hospital. "Dad, how are you feeling?" "Better," I said. "Emily, I'd like us to have dinner, the family, this week if you can manage it. There are some things I want to say in person." A pause, brief, barely there. "Of course, Dad. I'd really like that." And then, almost too casual, "Would it be okay if Richard joined us? He's been asking about you." I looked at Patricia's photograph one more time. "Sure," I said. "The more the merrier." I ended the call, stood at the kitchen counter, said nothing to anyone, just breathed. Then I called Gloria. "They're all coming," I said. "Emily, Michael, and Richard." Her voice did not change. "I'll have everything ready." I arrived 15 minutes early. The restaurant was called Arroyo, a quiet Italian place on Colorado Boulevard that I had eaten at twice before, once with Patricia the year she got her diagnosis, and once alone the winter after she died. I had chosen it deliberately. Neutral ground, good lighting, tables far enough apart that a difficult conversation would not become a public event. I asked for the corner table, back to the wall facing the door. 38 years of negotiating contracts had given me certain habits that I saw no reason to abandon now. I ordered sparkling water and watched the door. They came in together, Emily and Michael, first Richard, a half step behind, the three of them moving with the particular ease of people who believe they are walking into a situation they understand. Emily was smiling. Michael had his hand at the small of her back. Richard was wearing a blazer and carrying that confidence he always carried, the confidence of a man who had spent decades selling things to people who didn't know they were being sold to. They sat. Menus arrived. The waiter described the specials. We ordered salmon for Emily, steak for Michael, the branzino for Richard, pasta for me. The table talk was easy and warm the way it always was on the surface, and I let it be easy. I asked Richard about his golf game. I asked Emily about Lily's hamster. Michael told a story about a property showing that had gone sideways in an entertaining way, and we all laughed, and the wine went around. And for 20 minutes, it felt almost like what it was pretending to be. Then the plates were cleared. I reached under my chair and placed the folder on the table. It landed with a soft sound that somehow carried across all four of them at once. The conversation stopped not all at once, but in sequence, like lights going out in a building floor by floor, until the table was quiet and everyone was looking at what I had put between us. So I asked you all here tonight. I said, because I believe in being honest with the people I love, and I'd like them to be honest with me. I opened the folder and separated it into 3 sections. I slid the first section to Richard. A single page, the property record for the Encino address, the down payment amount, the name of the LLC it had originated from, and a separate sheet tracing that LLC back to its connection with Michael. Richard picked it up. His face did not change, but his hand, I noticed, was not entirely steady. I slid the second section to Michael. The LLC incorporation records all 3 companies, the Delaware filings, the dates 5 months before my house went on the market. The transaction history. $127,400, itemized line by line, each transfer dated and sourced. Michael stared at the pages without touching them, his jaw tight. The easy confidence of 20 minutes ago evaporating in a way that was almost visible. I slid the third section to Emily. The lab reports on both bottles. The CVS camera, still Emily at the counter. The timestamp, the product she had purchased. The building camera, still Emily in the lobby, the small item disappearing into her jacket pocket. The transcript of our conversation from my apartment, the one about the power of attorney. The one where she had told me she would handle everything and I would not need to worry about a single thing. Emily's hands came up from her lap and pressed flat against the table on either side of the pages, as if she needed to hold something still. Michael pushed his chair back and started to stand. Alvin, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding here. Sit down, Michael. My voice did not rise. I did not need it to. The district attorney's office received copies of everything on this table yesterday morning. Michael sat down. Richard put his page face down on the table. He picked up his wine glass, found it empty, and set it back down. For the first time since I had known him, he had nothing to say. The man who had opinions about everyone's finances, who had leaned back in his chair at my daughter's dinner table and told me what to do with money I had spent a lifetime earning. He sat in a restaurant in Pasadena on a Thursday night with a real estate record in front of him and nothing left to sell. I looked at the 3 of them. I thought about the morning I had handed the keys to the house on Redondo Avenue to a young couple with a baby on their hip. I thought about Patricia's roses. I thought about 38 years and a French press and a notebook full of dates and amounts that told a story I had not wanted to read. I spent 38 years knowing when someone was lying to me, I said quietly. It took me longer than it should have this time. That's on me. I turned to Emily. Her eyes were fixed on the transcript pages. Her chin was trembling in the way it did when she was trying very hard not to cry and losing the effort. Emily, I said. She looked up. I need to say something to you. Just you. The restaurant kept moving around us. Somewhere behind me, a waiter was reciting a dessert menu. A couple at the bar was laughing at something. The ambient noise of a Thursday evening in a moderately busy Italian restaurant on Colorado Boulevard continued exactly as it had before. I had placed a folder on the table and rearranged the lives of 3 people sitting across from me. Emily was looking at me. Her chin had stopped trembling. She had gathered herself in the way she always did when she felt cornered, the jaw set, the shoulders back, the eyes gone careful. Michael was looking at the tablecloth. Richard was looking at the window. Neither of them moved. I looked at my daughter. "Ooh, I remember the day you were born," I said. Long Beach Memorial, February 14th. Your mother had been in labor for 11 hours, and she was exhausted and furious, and the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life, and then they put you in my arms, and I held you for the first time, and I thought, I stopped, cleared my throat. I thought, this is it. This is what I built for. Not the company, not the house, not the money. For her. Emily's careful expression cracked down the middle. Her eyes filled so fast she couldn't stop it, and one tear ran straight down her cheek before she pressed her lips together and held the rest back by force of will. You didn't take my money, Emily. My voice stayed low and even. I needed it to stay that way. Money I can live without. You took something else. You took 40 years of me believing I was building something for someone who saw me as a father. You took that. And I want you to know that is the thing that cost me the most, not the account statements, not the bottles, not any of it. That. Emily made a sound that was not quite a word. Her hand came up and covered her mouth. Michael shifted in his chair. His jaw worked once. Then he said quietly, Alvin, I take responsibility for my part in Michael. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on Emily. I'm not talking to you right now. He stopped. I forgive you. I said it directly to her clearly, the way I had said things to her whole life when I needed her to actually hear them and not just let them wash over her. I want you to know that. Not because what you did was small, it wasn't small, Emily, and I won't pretend it was. But because carrying that anger means you'd still be taking something from me. And I am done letting things be taken. She was crying now, openly, both hands pressed flat against the table, her shoulders shaking with the effort of trying to stay quiet about it. Dad. Her voice broke completely. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how. I know, I said, and I did know. I knew how it had happened, the slow accumulation of small choices, the way each one made the next one easier, the way Michael's pressure and Richard's expectations and the life they were trying to maintain had narrowed the path until she couldn't see the edges of it anymore. I understood it. Understanding it was not the same as accepting it. And accepting it was not the same as letting it continue. Forgiveness is not the same as trust, I said. And love is not the same as having no limits. I should have taught you that better. That's on me, too. I stood up. I laid enough cash on the table to cover the dinner. I put on my jacket, and I placed my hand on Emily's shoulder for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to mean something, short enough to be honest about what it did and did not mean. Then I walked out of the restaurant. The February night air hit my face, and I stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at the sky above Colorado Boulevard, the orange glow of the city blotting out most of the stars. My chest ached, not from the shoulder injury, which had mostly healed, but from something older and less locatable. The particular ache of a thing that was broken and known to be broken, and would take a very long time to become something else. I breathed in, breathed out, my phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. It's done. DA confirmed receipt this morning. They move tomorrow at 7. I read the message twice, slid the phone back into my pocket, stood on the sidewalk a little longer. Then I walked to my car and drove home to Pasadena in the dark. And the city lights moved past the windows like something being left behind. And I thought about Patricia, and I thought about Lily asking if I was sad. And I thought about a piece of cherry wood in a workshop and the particular satisfaction of a joint that fits together exactly right without being forced. Some things I thought. Some things you just have to trust the fit. I was not there when they came. I want to be clear about that. I did not stand outside the house on Micheltorena Street at 7 in the morning and watch. I did not drive past. I did not ask Marcus for a play-by-play. Whatever happened at that door, the knock, the badges, the words read aloud in the early morning quiet of a Silver Lake neighborhood, While the rest of the street was still making coffee, I was not there for it, and I had not wanted to be. What I know is what Gloria told me that afternoon. In the measured, factual way she delivered all information, as if emotion were a variable she had long ago learned to hold separate from the work. Two detectives from LAPD and a special agent from the FBI field office in Westwood had arrived at the house on Micheltorena Street at 7:04 Friday morning. The FBI's involvement was straightforward wire fraud under federal statute triggers federal jurisdiction, which means the Bureau, not just the local department. Michael had been at home. He had been taken in for questioning. His laptop, his external drives, and 4 boxes of financial documents had been removed from his home office. The California Department of Real Estate had been notified, and his broker's license the credential he had spent 15 years building the thing that had put him in rooms with Beverly Hills clients and made him feel like a man who had arrived somewhere, was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. The 3 LLC accounts were frozen by court order the same morning. The escrow on the Encino property was halted. The $43,000 that had traveled from my savings account through a shell company to a down payment on a house for people I had met twice at holiday dinners, that money was now in legal suspension, neither theirs nor mine, until a court decided otherwise. Richard Holt's attorney received a letter from the DA's office at his Pasadena office by 10 a.m. I did not know what Richard did when he read it. I found I did not particularly need to know. I was not in Pasadena that morning either. I had woken at 5, made coffee, sat on the balcony in the dark for a while, and then without planning it, without telling anyone, gotten in my car and driven west on the 210 and then south on the 110 and then west again on the 10 until I reached the Pacific Coast Highway, and I had turned north and just driven. The ocean was silver and enormous in the early morning light. The highway was nearly empty. I drove with the window down and the heater on the cold, salt air moving through the car and the engine running steady beneath me. And I did not think about LLC filings or lab results or the particular expression on Richard Holt's face when he had picked up a piece of paper that told him exactly what he had done. I thought about Patricia, not the last months, not the hospital, not the weight loss, not the particular silence of a house after someone who filled it completely is no longer there. I thought about earlier. I thought about a Sunday morning in 1987 when we had driven up this same highway in a car that cost $4,000 and had no air conditioning, Patricia with her feet on the dashboard and the radio playing something we both knew every word, to laughing about nothing, going nowhere in particular, just going. I pulled off at a small lot north of Malibu and parked facing the water and sat with the engine off. The waves came in. The waves went out. "I think I'm going to be okay," I said out loud. My voice sounded strange in the quiet car, rougher than I expected, and smaller, and entirely honest. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. A video call. I looked at the screen. Lily. I picked up. Her face filled the screen, 7-year-old hair still not entirely brushed clearly, calling from the babysitter's phone because she had figured out how. "Grandpa." Her voice was serious in the way she got when something was important to her. "Are you okay? You look like you're at the beach." "I am at the beach," I said. Her eyes went wide. "Without me." Something moved through my chest, warm and sharp and wonderful. "Next time," I said. "I promise. Next time we'll go together." She thought about this with the gravity of someone considering a binding contract. Then she nodded, once satisfied. "Okay," she said. "Okay, Grandpa." After she hung up, I sat there a little longer, the phone warm in my hand, the Pacific stretching out in front of me all the way to somewhere I couldn't see. Then I started the car and drove north toward Thousand Oaks, and for the first time in longer than I could accurately remember, I had no particular idea what tomorrow would look like. I found to my considerable surprise that I was fine with that. 9 months later, I was building a chair. Cherry wood, simple joinery, no nails and no glue, just the pieces cut right and fitted together. The way wood has been fitted together for centuries before anyone decided shortcuts were acceptable. I was in the workshop at the Canyons at Thousand Oaks on a Tuesday morning. The kind of December morning where the light comes through the east-facing windows at an angle that makes everything look considered, and I was taking my time. Patricia had been right about that. She was right about most things. The Canyons was a 55-plus community 12 miles north of Pasadena, nestled into the hills above the Conejo Valley, with a view of the Santa Monica Mountains that changed color depending on the time of day. My unit was on the second floor, 2 bedrooms, a small balcony facing west, a parking spot that was mine and only mine. My neighbor Harold, a retired high school history teacher from Oxnard, knocked on my door the first week with a bottle of decent Zinfandel and a story about the 1969 World Series that lasted 45 minutes and was completely worth it. I had been doing fine. Emily's case was still making its way through the system. These things take time, Gloria had told me, 18 months to 2 years before a trial date, possibly longer. Michael's attorney had filed several motions. Richard Holt had retained his own counsel and was cooperating with prosecutors in ways that Gloria implied were not making Michael's situation easier. The Encino property remained in legal suspension. I did not follow the details closely. I had given Gloria everything she needed, and I trusted her to do the work, and I had made a decision sometime around October that the case was hers to carry now and mine to set down. I saw Lily and Noah every other Saturday. We went to Traveltown Museum and Griffith Park twice. Noah standing in front of each locomotive with his arms crossed, delivering verdicts on their historical significance, with the authority of someone who had been conducting this research his entire 10 years of life. He would point at a particular engine and say things like, "This one changed everything, Grandpa," with a certainty that made me think he was going to be very good at something someday, though I wasn't yet sure what. We went to the La Brea tar pits on a gray November afternoon, and Lily stood at the observation fence looking down at the bubbling asphalt and asked me very seriously whether the animals that got stuck there knew what was happening to them. "I don't think so," I said. "I think they just wandered in." She thought about that. "That's kind of sad," she said. "It is," I said. "But also they've been remembered for 10,000 years. That's not nothing." She looked at me for a moment, then back at the tar pit, as if she were deciding whether that was a satisfactory answer. Then she moved on to the next exhibit, and I followed her. And I thought that she was going to be the kind of person who asked the right questions her whole life. We ate ice cream on Ventura Boulevard in the November cold because Lily had decided that ice cream had no season, and I found I agreed with her completely. I never spoke about their parents in terms that would require them to choose a side. They were children. They deserved to be children. Whatever came out of the courtroom in the months ahead, whatever Emily's choices looked like in the light of a judge's ruling, Lily and Noah were not responsible for any of it, and I was not going to let them feel like they were. One morning in November, I received a letter from Gloria's office, a court-ordered asset freeze notification, informational, no action required. The money was still in legal suspension. It was not mine to use yet, and might not be for some time. I read the letter twice, folded it back into the envelope, and put it in the filing cabinet in my spare bedroom in a folder behind the lease agreement and the insurance documents. Then I went to make coffee. That same week, I called the foundation office at Emily's old university and asked about establishing a named scholarship. The woman I spoke with was patient and clear, and she walked me through the process, the way Gloria had walked me through the legal process, with the kind of precision that comes from having done this many times, and understanding that the person on the other end of the phone needs it said plainly. I used money from my own savings, the $232,000 I had kept liquid since the Long Beach sale. The cushion, the number that had let a 68-year-old man sleep at night through the worst months of the last year. 50,000 of it went into the Patricia Carter Scholarship Fund, designated for students in the accounting program, demonstrating financial need. It felt right in a way I hadn't expected. Not triumphant, not sentimental, just right the way a joint feels when the fit is true, and you set the mallet down and step back and know the work is done. It felt like something she would have approved of. Lily called me the following Sunday from her mother's phone. I didn't ask how she had gotten access to it. At 7 years old, Lily had already demonstrated that questions like that were somewhat beside the point. "Grandpa," she said very seriously, "Mom told me you made a scholarship at her old school, with Grandma's name on it." "That's right," I said. She was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of a 7-year-old processing something that is larger than the words available to her, the kind of quiet that meant she was actually thinking rather than just waiting for her turn to speak. Then, "I think Grandma would really like that." "I think so too," I said. "She was the smartest person I ever knew." "I know," Lily said with complete confidence, as though this were simply a fact of the world she had always understood, and found it mildly surprising that I would feel the need to say it. I laughed. Not politely, actually laughed, the kind that comes up from somewhere you forgot was still working. "I love you, sweetheart," I said. "I love you too, Grandpa," she said. "Also, can we go to the beach next time?" "Yes," I said. "We can go to the beach next time." She hung up with the abruptness of someone who had accomplished the mission and moved on. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after that in the afternoon light of my Thousand Oaks apartment, thinking about a Sunday morning in 1987 on the Pacific Coast Highway, with Patricia's feet on the dashboard. Thinking about a baby girl asleep in a car seat the day we moved into the house on Redondo Avenue. Thinking about all the versions of a life that exist inside one life stacked up like the rings of a tree, and how most of them are still in there, even the ones that ended badly, even the ones you wouldn't choose again. Now I stood in the workshop in the December morning light and ran my thumb along the joint where the side rail met the rear leg of the chair. No gap, no wobble, just wood meeting wood the way it was meant to. I had been working on it for 6 weeks. I was in no hurry. Patricia used to say I made my best work when I wasn't rushing toward anything, and I had finally, at 68, started to believe her. She was right about that too. She was right about most things. I just needed longer than I should have to figure that out. I set the piece down and went to the window. The Santa Monica Mountains were going gold in the morning light, the way they do in December, when the air is clear and the Santa Ana winds have been through and taken everything unnecessary with them. The sky was the hard, clean blue I had looked up at on the sidewalk outside the Arroyo restaurant on a February night that felt much longer than 9 months ago. 68 years old. I had built a company from 2 crews and a leaking truck. I had loved a woman for 43 years and held her hand at the end. I had lost a daughter not to death, but to something harder to name, something I was still finding words for, and suspected I might be finding words for a very long time yet. And I had learned this finally, the way you learn the things that matter slowly at some cost, and not until you needed to. The things worth keeping do not hold together by force. You cut the pieces right. You take your time. You pay attention. And if they fit, if you did the work honestly and didn't rush the parts that needed patience, they hold. Not because you made them, because you let them. I picked up the chair rail, went back to work. Outside, the morning kept going the way mornings do, indifferent and generous, and entirely unconcerned with whether any of us are ready for them. I was ready, or close enough, that I had decided was sufficient. There are things I wish I had known sooner. Love is not a blank check. Family is not an excuse to take from someone who trusts you. And the most painful truth I carried out of all of this, harder than any courtroom, harder than any account statement, is that I waited too long because I confused love with permission. Don't be like me. Trust what you feel early. Protect what you built before the cost becomes everything. I am not a perfect father, but I am an honest one. And I truly believe that God places the right people in your path at the right moment. A doctor who asked the right question. A detective who answered the phone. A lawyer who said, "Don't sign anything." None of that was coincidence. These family stories' revenge don't end with anger. They end with clarity. With a chair that holds us together without a single nail. With a scholarship in my wife's name. With a 7-year-old who calls me from the babysitter's phone just to make sure I'm okay. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this family drama revenge story reached you, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss these family stories revenge and family drama revenge that remind us who we are. Thank you for staying until the very end. Some details in this story are fictional, created for reflection and storytelling purposes. If this content isn't right for you, no hard feelings. Choose what serves your heart best.